Hello, we
Nikita Kamzolov.
Samvel Arutyunyan.
and me, Andrew Gladkikh, are undergraduate students from St. Petersburg Electrotechnical University located in St. Petersburg, Russia.
Our coach is Dmitry Pavlov. We're excited to compete in SCUDEM 5 contest.
Without further ado, let's get started.
After some discussions, we decided to choose problem C, managing different dispute resolution strategies. Firstly, let's talk a bit about the context of the problem. Terrible events that followed the split of the country of Sudan into Sudan and South Sudan had resulted in the creation of refugee settlements in Uganda. And though many aspects of the lives of the people within these camps aren't understood, recent studies showed interesting facts about how they resolve disputes. Many people bring their own systems and preferences and tend to incorporate their own traditions into the process of resolving disputes. We chose this problem because we were really interested to see how we can describe human interaction using only mathematical model. We focused on three methods for dispute resolution: negotiation, arbitration, and mediation. So, to put our problem in a simpler way, how do the different practices come together and create a new system in the context of refugee settlement? And how does the process of dispute resolution change and evolve over time?
And now, questions we are going to answer. How people interact over time, how different parties agree to a method to resolve a dispute, how the preferences of a settlement's population change over time, what happens when new people move into a settlement and how their preferences change the current trends within the settlement, which practice will be adopted by the people in the long run.
We started with a series-based model, but soon we found out that it was rather inconvenient, as the control of the people going from one group to another was very complicated, and also we came to the conclusion we don't have the recovered group within our task. After consideration, we came up with an idea of using a preference vector, which reflected a person's preferences about each of three methods. But there was still one question remaining. We could predict the number of people preferring some method and the number of people that went from one group to another. But how can we choose a person that changed his mind and moved to another strategy? The answer for that was quite simple. We placed a person's preferences in the center of our model. That means that from now on we would predict not the number of people supporting each strategy, but the preferences of each person in a given moment, and then count the number of, let's call them followers, of the strategies.
Let's now talk about the assumptions we've made. To make a model simpler, we decided that people in the model are immortal and can have kids. This lets us not to take into account the natural growth of the follower size, just like their decrease. And also, therefore, the only thing that increases the total number of people is adding newcomers. We believe that a person's opinions are based on his or her opinions from the past and the results of the previous world. We assume that a person's preference about a certain resolution method should be between 0 and 1. There, 0 means that the person completely dislikes the method, and 1 means that the method reflects his point of view the best. The sum of these three numbers is constant and equals 1. As to the things that shape the decision, we've chosen to use two coefficients. The first one is a person's suggestibility. It describes how crucial the herd instinct will be to his final decision. All the other things, for example, gender, age, traditions, profession, and so on, are combined in a second factor that describes the influence of listed things. These coefficients can also be described by numbers between 0 and 1. That means that we can combine all these 5 numbers in a 5 elements vector that is unique for every person in the settlement. And as we said earlier, the total number of people in the settlement is changed only by newcomers. New people come once a month, and their size is within the 5% range of the total amount of people in the settlement. The last but not the least, they assume that different parties agree to a method by casting a vote. Each person votes for a method he prefers. The method that a majority of people voted in wins.
Finally, we came to the most interesting part of our presentation, modeling. Here is our basic model. It's a simple representation of our assumptions written using the system of ordinary differential equations. First term is all about herd instinct. We believe that person's final decision is influenced not only by his personal characteristics, but the number of people in each group. A person will most likely join the biggest group, regardless of the other factors. The second term takes the difference between the preference rate we are currently counting and the other two and multiplies it by personal characteristics rate, which is constant at the moment. The term describes a person's favoring between each method. So here we have plots that show how the basic model behaves. But before we proceed with the plot analysis, let's discuss how we represented our data. Each graph shows the changes in the number of people that prefer negotiation red line, mediation green line, and arbitration blue line. Y-axis reflects the number of people, and x-axis represents the meetings. Dotted lines on the right graph mark the days when newcomers arrive in the settlement. In all the examples of our model, we decided to set the total amount of people to 10,000, and the duration of simulation is 700 meetings. People's preferences are also the same. Back to the plot analysis. Each model is represented by two graphs, with and without the addition of new people. Firstly, let's discuss things that are common to both plots. At the starting point, all three methods have almost equal numbers of followers. Right after the start of the simulation, the arbitration method surpasses all the others, while the negotiation and mediation method begins to struggle. But at the approximately 60th meeting, negotiation method clearly becomes a leader, whereas arbitration followers' number rapidly decreases. It happens because the people that preferred mediation in the beginning disappoint in their method and choose to support either negotiation or arbitration depending on which factor has more influence on them. Herd instinct due to the fact that the arbitration method is in the majority, or that their second biggest preference rate is negotiation. After about 100 meetings, people stopped changing their preferences, and the following situation was established. The negotiation method is the absolute leader. The remaining methods have much less followers, but it's still clearly seen that people prefer the arbitration method over the mediation. Now let's talk about differences. Starting from approximately 100th meeting, the first graph almost stops changing, while the second plot continues to vary and may even change the overall method hierarchy. The left plot is way smoother than the right one. You can clearly see the spikes on the days when newcomers arrive.
The MFM model is similar to the basic model. The only difference is that now the B coefficient, which was a constant in the previous system, increases with each meeting by the constant of 0.02 every 25 days. So the coefficient B now also indicates the person's loyalty or habit to the method. And this is what we get now. Let's look at the first graph. The main difference from the basic model is that the gap between leading and losing methods is much smaller, and so is the maximum of the followers. The growth and decrease is also slower, hence the balance of the system comes earlier. And the reason for that is our loyalty factor. After around 50 meetings, the person that has stayed in the same group for all that time has increased sympathy for the method, and that lowers his wavering between over two. The same things can be said about the plot with newcomers. While the negotiation followers amount took it to the skies in the basic model case, here we see that all of the numbers grow at nearly the same speed.
In real life, people always communicate with each other, and some of them even try to spread their opinion to others. It means we can add two additional groups to our model based on their level of impact on others, active and passive. Passive people do not share their opinion with others, but active ones do, and so they try to persuade other people that their preferred method is cooler, better, and so on. We assume the person to be active if one of his or her preference rates is larger than 0.8. In the final model, we've added a new term. K-probability here means the likelihood of meeting an active person. This new term shows how active person affect others' preferences. The more active people you communicate with, the more you believe in their preferred method, and vice versa. And so this is what we finally get. As with the previous versions, we see how an isolated system tends to be balanced and stops. The gap between methods becomes a little bit bigger because of the influence of active people. Interesting but probably obvious conclusion: the more active people a method gets, the faster it grows. All that resulted in an increase of the total number of negotiation followers for about 200 people. Though the overall image may look the same as the previous one, but the overall growth rate of the most preferred strategy is much faster than on the previous model.
We decided to check what will happen if people give preference to two main methods, mediation and arbitration, and the third method will be supported by the minority. And we got an amazing result. Number of people on the two main methods grows almost the same. But we can notice that without adding new people, mediation followers amount is bigger than arbitration followers amount, which cannot be said for the plot with the addition of new people. There, the amount of followers of arbitration exceeds the amount of followers of mediation.
And let's go to the limitations of our model. Firstly, we do not take into account the way all the three methods solve problems. For example, the negotiation method can be more preferable to most of the population because of its democratic character. And vice versa, arbitration can be less preferable because of prejudices about outsiders. Secondly, all our coefficients were hand-picked or random-picked. It's preferable for the development of the model to study social research that would show more reasonable coefficients. Thirdly, some unexpected events can take place in a settlement. Such events can change an established vision for solving internal problems. Some of the possible events are wars, deaths of leaders, natural disasters, and so on.
So, to summarize all of the above, we've made a model of a vibrant refugee settlement where people choose the method to solve disputes. Our person has his or her own opinions about each method that can be changed by basically interacting with others and taking into account other people's opinions, consciously or without even realizing it. People can agree on one method if it gets the most votes, but that doesn't mean it won't ever change. Whether they simply change their mind because of the attractiveness of the quickly rising other method, or simply new people will come. But in the long run, usually people don't change their opinions after some point, and that makes sense. Why change the thing that works for you? Thank you for watching. Hope you've enjoyed our presentation as much as we enjoyed making it. Bye.